My name is Christy True, and I'm the Director of King County's Department of Natural Resources and Parks. Thank you so much for being here today. We have a couple of elected officials that are going to be speaking, so I will be introducing them, but there are a couple of others in the audience. I'd like to welcome Lee Grumman from Carnation, council member. Lee, there you are in the green jacket. And Siri Erickson Brown, who's a recently elected commissioner for the Snoqualmie Valley Water Improvement District. She's up here, also an advisory committee member. Again, thank you so much for being here today. This is really an unprecedented effort and milestone today, and it's also, I know, much anticipated milestone that we're celebrating here today. The formation of the Snoqualmie Fish, Flood, and Farm Advisory Committee was born from a really critical need for us to make progress in protecting two threatened species, our farmers and our fish. And part of the things that we had to do is reduce flood in the valley to protect those, amongst a number of other things. So in 2012, the King County Comprehensive Plan directed us to create a very collaborative and grassroots effort to come together to look at ways that we can really raise everybody up in terms of protecting farming, fish, and flood in the Snoqualmie Valley. So in 2013, King County Executive Dow Constantine asked me to make sure that I assembled representatives that would represent all of the interests in the Snoqualmie Valley to come together and look at ways that we can solve the problems that are faced in the Snoqualmie Valley. And I think one thing that is really very cool about this is so many of the advisory committee members actually live in the Snoqualmie Valley. And that's really key in terms of making this a grassroots effort. So after more than 100 hours, this is a very historic valley. 100 hours of presentations and discussions over 25 meetings, and actually I think today was 26 meetings, is that right, Tammy? Spanning 3 years, and I know time spent away from your crops and your families and other priorities, and having many very difficult conversations. The advisory committee is here today to provide the executive with 34 specific recommendations really aimed at our top priorities for saving fish and enhancing fish, saving our farms, and be prepared to respond to floods in the valley. So with that, I would like to introduce our county executive, Dow Constantine, to say a few words.
Thanks, Christy, and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to Carnation Farms. You know, this looks like one of those green screen deals. It's okay, communications. I'm going to need a red barn, a river, a green field, some rolling hills. But no, this is King County. This, just as the Space Needle, this is King County, Washington, a remarkable and remarkably diverse place. And we gather today to celebrate a remarkable achievement, one that will improve the health of the valley and of our region for generations to come. When I convened the Fish, Farm, and Flood Advisory Committee, I gave them a difficult assignment: overcome competing interests to achieve shared goals. And also work closely with two tribal nations, the Tulalip and the Snoqualmie, to ensure we honor Native culture and economy and community. It required, as we've already heard this morning, this afternoon, a lot of work, compromise, and candor. And this group delivered exactly what our region needed. They produced recommendations that will help us restore salmon habitat, strengthen our agricultural economy, and reduce flood risks here in the Snoqualmie Valley. Congratulations and thank you for that remarkable achievement. This confluence isn't unique to rural King County. Other parts of the country face similar challenges. Struggles to protect fish and wildlife, struggles where farmers are working hard to produce the food we need, and working alongside tribal nations who are seeking to protect their historic legacy. and their economic future. And what's unique to King County is our proven ability to work together to achieve common goals, realizing that no matter which particular interest we represent, we all want to make this a better place to live for all of us. We demonstrated that same ability last year when business and labor and environmental advocates and so many others worked together to help create and then pass Sound Transit 3, a winning coalition that finally created the plan to knit together a growing region. We don't ask groups to put aside their differences, to ignore their priorities. We ask them to demonstrate mutual respect, to understand where the other person's coming from, to see that we have common interests, and then to figure out how we can serve all of those interests. And that ability to do more than one thing at a time is what has helped make King County the economic engine that it is today. And now it is shaping the future of the Snoqualmie Valley, a place where both fish and farms can flourish. So I want to thank everyone who made this achievement possible, including the farmers who don't have all the professional staff to send to meetings. They volunteer their own time to go to it. I'm glad that I didn't have to sit through the hundreds of hours myself, but thank you to my staff who did that. And I want to thank the Snoqualmie and Tulalip tribes for their willingness to work with farmers and others to demonstrate the trust that made today's celebration possible. This victory is truly one that we all can share. Thank you so very much. Christy.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Jason Walker. I know probably everybody here knows Jason. He's a council member for the city of Duval, and he's also been a very dedicated and longtime member of the Snoqualmie Valley Watershed Forum. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you. I can't stand in front of this beautiful landscape without saying a few things about the Snoqualmie Valley. And this is the largest watershed in King County. It encompasses over 700 square miles from the Cascade Crest to the confluence of the Snohomish River near Monroe. Those who live in rural communities know a few things about rural character and what this backdrop represents to us here. Rural character to us is very much the natural beauty of our surroundings. It is our communities. But it's also knowing that each of us not only has a voice, but has an influence in our future. And this effort very much represents rural character. We are a group of people from diverse interests that have come together to address some fairly wicked problems. Issues of flood risk reduction, issues of agricultural preservation, and issues of salmon recovery. Some key points about the Snoqualmie watershed and salmon recovery is that we need to do all we can. Our salmon are on the brink of extinction. They are experiencing what is known as an ecological collapse. And we need to move quickly. Now that we have this agreement in place, we can address some key priority projects, including the Barfuse Floodplain Restoration Project near Snoqualmie. And we need to maximize the benefits and minimize impacts associated with those large projects. And that's what we've learned here. We have a lot of opportunities, but those opportunities are constrained by farms that need to produce food for our region. They're constrained by infrastructure. And they also create impacts to those other interests that we need for our communities to be viable. And we need to offset those impacts as we move forward. We could do that by being accountable, by implementing all we've learned here and all we've agreed upon to do together. We can do that by carrying forward with our legitimacy of this effort and with the trust that we have all found within each other, and by focusing on those substantive outcomes, 34 of them, that we will all be watching and we'll all be learning from and seeing how we can do this thing better next time and how other communities can use this as a model effort. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jason. And I know another person that probably everybody here knows who's been a very dedicated community servant and farmer, Bobby Lindemulder. Please come forward.
Thank you. First, I wanted to say that this process has been a process of trust, education, consensus building, and collaboration, but most importantly, trust. I've been on many committees in King County over the years. I've never been on a committee where I felt agriculture was truly at the table, such as this, where people were truly interested in how we operated, mentally, financially, and physically on our land, where the ag opinion was embraced. We learned more on this committee about fish and gained a new perspective on where everyone was and why, as well as gained a huge respect for everyone at the table and what they needed, what their constraints were, what their responsibilities are. We listened, we argued, we trusted, but most of all, we respected. We learned at the end of the day we truly are not all that different. Our missions and goals are the same, though the process may be very different and priorities may change. We learned as a group what is needed by all, though we understand as we sit here now today that nobody's going to get everything that they want. But we all understand that we are in this together, to hold each other up, to move forward in a thoughtful process so we succeed. Looking back on things where things have come from and where things are today in King County as a farmer, I'm constantly telling people how far we've come. To have a county willing to put ag land into production back when they did was a phenomenal task. To save the ground we also hold so dearly for so many reasons, while I see other counties struggling and farms being overwhelmed by development and losing some of their best and most productive soils, makes me wonder what the future holds for them. And in my mind, this makes ag land in King County even more valuable and more important on so many levels, and not just food production, but to support fish, wildlife, and water quality. To have a county that has been so supportive of agriculture, setting priorities, providing funds, providing staff, and supporting other entities is one of the biggest changes that I've seen over time, and we are grateful. That being said, we need to continue to move forward to allow all farmers to be able to maintain drainage and infrastructure, add infrastructure, whatever that may be, in a way that not only makes sense, allows for responsible protection of natural resources, fish and water, but is also affordable in terms of that the requirements to do so and the process is easy enough that it makes sense and the process is not so daunting or takes so long that the regulations will not be followed. As ag representatives, this was daunting for us, this process. We didn't want to screw this up. We wanted this to end well. We wanted to be able to participate at the highest level. We wanted to be able to live in our communities and feel we were responsible to everyone we represented. This committee allowed us to do that. This committee understood and patiently waited for us. They allowed us to go about our farming needs during the busy summer when we needed to be in the fields and couldn't meet. They allowed us to go out into our communities and help with the help of Josh and Hannah and Cynthia and others to make sure that we allowed for every opportunity for people to speak and provide comment and information to us. We're grateful for that time. We realize it must have been frustrating, but it was imperative for us to get to the comfort level we needed when providing such important information back to the Committee on Agriculture. In closing, we expect we will meet all the recommendations in this agreement, but I expect we will do even more. What that more is unknown today, but what I do know is it's very exciting. We look forward to seeing this through. We look forward to further discussion on and continued trust on all sides, and increased collaboration and celebrations on all sides as we move forward together. And as we move forward together as partners, we can do great things. Farm, fish, and floods, without that three-legged stool, will teeter. With all of us moving forward together, the outcome can move the dial, the outcome can create change, and the outcome can develop generational partnerships and promises. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. I'd now like to introduce Laura Thomas. And it's when you work for a small city, you know that one person, every employee has multiple jobs that they have to do. So And we have many small communities and cities in the Snoqualmie Valley. So thank you so much for coming to represent the city of Carnation.
I'll take on Carnation as well.
It's not so small.
No, it's not so small. You know, it's not very often that a city planner gets to participate in an advisory committee. Usually I'm the one staffing on the other side, providing the information. So truly this was an honor and humbling experience. When I received the invitation, I'll say several years ago, the question I asked is, can I make a difference? And will we carry through on the recommendations? Because all too often, we take projects and plans and put them on a shelf and they never see the light of day again. So that was an important criteria for me to lift forward. I've lived in the valley for, oh, thank you. I've lived in the valley for almost 17 years. I come from actually a farming family and a fishing family. My roots here are over 130 years old. My family's farmed in the Dakotas, Colorado, Oklahoma, California, and Eastern Washington. Pretty much avocados to potatoes, whatever, we've pretty much grown it with no water. The opposite problem, obviously, is here in this valley. We have too much water. Most of us came together as strangers, but we've left as friends and colleagues. I have forged lasting relationships and connections that I'll have for a lifetime. I represented the Flood Caucus, which was really, I'll call it the eddy in the water. We kind of sat in the middle at times, and we could help and encourage both sides through that process. Flooding impacts this valley in so many ways. It impacts our farmers. They need structures above the floodplain. They need to be able to drain their fields. They need to be able to put their animals up. They need to be able to put their structures, their homes up above. And so that was one of those guiding lights and principles for our Flood Caucus. But on the other side, we also had fish habitat. We have endangered species within our watershed. And so doing levee setbacks is also a critical pathway forward. And so how did we combine those? We spent hundreds of hours, I want to say, not 100 hours at the table, trying to figure out and forge a lasting partnership that'll last generations. Protecting public infrastructure, though, is particularly important to the valley because we have a lot of residents that live in the valley, and we have a lot of trips coming through. And so I sat there also to represent my city and trying to see how we can get in and out of the valley during floods instead of being isolated, which impacts our entire Snoqualmie Valley. Since I have the last word in this group and so much has been said, I want to reiterate how important it is for King County, the Flood Control District, and all of our other partners to continue to lift this work into the next generation. Move projects forward, work on the policies needed that benefit both farms and fish, because along with that will come flood control reduction. This was the most challenging work I have done as a planner, but it's also been the most rewarding. I learned to learn and trust and value every member. Our farmers need help, our fish need help. We're here and we're committed long term. And I want to see the county and the Flood Control District take it to the next level. Policies and projects are what is next and needed. Our vision for the valley is thriving farms, recovered salmon populations. Let's accelerate these projects and these policies. Our decisions today will matter in the future. Big, bold steps. That was always said to us all along the way. There you are, big, bold steps. I was going to get it in. I really do want to thank you, though, obviously from a staff perspective. I want to thank the county. I want to thank the executive for putting this forward because it was a heavy lift. We are all the unsung heroes, and so let's move it forward.
Well put. So I have another thank you to Carnation Farms for hosting us today, and I also want to recognize Bridge Stewart who's here today. He's the president of Carnation Farms. Thank you for hosting us. And I've heard Bridge talk about the history of Carnation Farms. So if anybody has questions as we're eating cake and coffee, I hope that you'll take a few minutes and folks can come and ask you about Carnation Farms. It's a fantastic story. And I heard some Cub Scouts that were now grown were here coming out. So lots of good work that you have done in the Valley. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming and thank in particular the advisory committee who worked so hard on coming up with the 34 recommendations. And I will tell you, we know that there is still a lot of work ahead to follow through on the 34 recommendations and many of the really critical high priority things that we need to do to ensure that our farmers can continue to thrive and grow here, that our salmon will be recovered, and that people are going to be safe and be able to respond to floods in the Snoqualmie watershed. So thank you for that time. We're committed to following through, and we know that we have a lot of work ahead of us. And so on behalf of King County and all the residents and businesses, I want to thank the committee members for your many hours of service to this effort. And now we're going to proceed to our ceremonial signing.
Thank you.